where one of my projects was, and I would go there every other week to manage a construction job. And during that time, I was very stressed out about the project. Most of the times I would pray to God, I'm like, just help me get through today, help me meet this deadline, help me meet these people's expectations, help me not fail in my tasks. Because, living with ADHD and a learning disability, I often feel like that my secret's going to come out to my boss and to everybody around me, and they're going to say, oh, disabled, he's inept, and we're going to take away responsibilities, we're going to somehow do this, we're going to change how we treat Ian. So I have this insecurity, and I would get really locked into working really, really hard, try to cover that up and look extra productive. So that means late hours and a whole lot of anxiety, which also means a lot of time away from family and a lot of sacrifices. So in one of these drives, I also have a hard time staying awake because I'm up all night preparing for things. So driving 2.5 hours or 2 hours is always a challenge. So, you get the little jack up on your windshields and you put your cell phone there. I'm like, I got 2 hours, I wish I could be doing something. And so I'd put on YouTube. Now, I was watching the road.
Audible.
And I was listening, it's coming through the audio.
You're that guy.
No, I'm not that guy. I'm like focused, but I can listen to stuff. And to be honest, when I put on the YouTube, probably like, probably a lot, just average person, you get on there and you want to find something that's really, in my case I was kind of desperate because I needed to stay awake, so I'd put on like conspiracy theories or something, and I'm not a conspiracist at all, but I was like, you know what, this would be entertaining, see what's out there, and I put on the conspiracy theories, and those are dark moments, some of those drives, because you just, it's just like, whew, the world is going to ruins, So in kind of surfing around and trying to figure out what my itinerary was for the YouTube for my trip, I felt this kind of, I was trying to get information and be creative about getting information, stuff I would never really look into. And it had occurred to me, and probably because some of the conspiracy theories was not making me feel so great, that, hey, there's this guy called N.T. Wright, and I know we've read books about him, and we've talked, refer to him sometimes in our talks, and I said, I'm just going to plug him in. And so there's hundreds of lectures of N.T. Wright. And like, hey, all right, 30 minutes or an hour and a half, or there'll be like a question and answer section or something, at the end where he's talking to students. Then there'll be these other panels where he's debating with other theologians. And I'm like, let's put that on. And so I got into this pattern of, first of all, the talks are amazing, and you feel completely transformed after it. And it's very thought-provoking, and all of a sudden the Bible becomes this thing that's accessible. And you're like, I didn't know that something that's happening in the New Testament was referring to something or quoting something in the Old Testament, and there's all these parallels and connections that were starting to happen. And so then I went through this phase of driving down that I would spend about an hour in conspiracy theories and then try to cleanse myself by listening to N.T. Wright just to get myself back into a holistic position, as a person. But so I think slowly I just started to, I didn't even care about whatever the other entertainment was. And it wasn't always conspiracy stuff. I just became hooked on these lectures. And then I started to find people that he was listening with in a conference and put that person's name in and listen to that lecturer. And I just started to hop, skip, and jump around. And sometimes I'd hear the same message over and over again, but done differently because of the university that he's speaking to, from Fuller to another type of school. And but what I started to notice is that my heart was changing. What I was hearing over and over again wasn't somebody's personality, I was hearing the gospel. Over and over and over again, said in different ways, with different connections throughout the Bible. And so then coming here, church started to evolve into something else. It's like, I know that passage, and I know what so-and-so has expounded on that passage and what it was about, and I see what we're doing here, and that's interesting. And all of a sudden, it's become this connected landscape. And with a changed heart now, I find that my conversations with my wife and friends, they start to change. Because what's changing with a changed heart is a changed worldview. I don't have that conspirators, I never really did before a short period of time, I guess I started to. I had a worldview of something of skepticism and of negativity, of desperation, and by just changing something in YouTube in a search and taking that time of drive and spending it on something like listening to a lecture, I really started to see the world differently. And so when I felt like every day was a bad day and a desperate day, I started to see that every day is a broken day, but there is the strength and the hope. I don't feel overpowered by it. I actually feel a little more equipped. And it's not because I have quotes from a passage or quotes from the Bible or anything, and I come through and I look through the Bible and find what I need for that day, like you go through the index and just find that devotional quote or whatever. It's actually, for me, it was connecting the whole story and seeing a larger picture and the role that humans have in God's creation. So that changed worldview is a changed view of me being in the world. And I think that is a way of bringing God into the center. And so now my prayers aren't the desperate prayers of get me through my tasks, help me meet other people's expectations. Now my prayers are more thankful, and they're more looking outward to what, in a day, what could I do to add value to a person? What could I do to take the next step in understanding who God is more? So instead of looking at the Bible and looking at the day as a sense of like, hey, God, can you show up for the things that I need? Just do the things that I'm asking. I'm a little bit kind of switched it around and said, well, hey, thank you for protecting me and being with me. Now I'm ready to hear what you're asking me to do. And it's something that's going on and working on right now with this changed worldview. So I credit, the journey is really down to spending time, like what changes all this is spending time with the Word of God. That's what I've learned. I've grown up Christian. You just get the little quotes in the Bible and in the messages for church services. But if you don't spend time with the Word, the story doesn't get into you and live in you. And so there's a couple of, I'm just going to share with you a couple of the resources that I've used. And one of the big ones is just go to the Bible, the Olive Tree. So this is an app that I would encourage everybody. There's many apps out there you can get on your phone and on your tablet. My mother-in-law bought me a tablet just randomly, and I'm not much of a reader, but it has changed. This has been part of that kind of this changed journey. It's just on this, one of the first purchases I did was N.T. Wright's Kingdom Bible. He did a translation of the New Testament, Kingdom New Testament, and then I later found that he did a commentary for the New Testament. And I've never owned a commentary before. And just owning this commentary and reading after each one of the passages, and here's in Romans, you'll get a little passage like this, and then you get a whole, basically like a mini sermon, a well-written, down-to-earth, accessible little bit of sermon that breaks down what this is, but then connects you to other parts of the Bible. And I don't know how many of you have commentaries, but it's completely opened up and made the Bible accessible. It hasn't been accessible to me before. And reading this now has become very, very accessible. And so I have here Romans 12:1 as a theme of just what's been going on. It's like, Paul, what's more, don't let yourself be squeezed into the shape dictated by the present age. Instead, be transformed by the renewing of your minds, so that you can work out what God's will is, what is good, acceptable, and complete. And I think that's what it's all about. When we're talking about these different points of simplifying your life and focusing your life on God, they can feel like tasks. They can feel like you're being squeezed. They can feel like another New Year's resolution you're going to fail at. But I think, by renewing your mind, be transformed by the renewing of your mind, get into the Word of God, and soak that in and start to love the story of God. And I think that the rest actually falls into place. Not that you're suddenly this perfect human, but you start to find a way of being, operating within the chaos of life with the biblical worldview. So a couple other. So my mother-in-law went to seminary, and my father-in-law is a Baptist minister. And thankfully on my trips lately, I've been able to spend time with him because now I'm traveling 4 hours north to Waterville, Maine. So I get a lot of the lectures, and I get to sit and talk to them about it. And my last point with her, or one of my points with her, is like, I don't think the gospel ever gets old. I think you can listen to that gospel over and over and over again, and it'll still bring you to tears. It'll still bring you to a place where you just are saying, God, forgive me for being, so distant from you. I want to get closer. And I think that by being closer with God, the other parts of life feel achievable. I think that the Holy Spirit really empowers you. So.
To take what Ian has shared, right, and be thinking about the table. And I'm going to bring up Kim at the end of this. We're going to watch a few minute video. It's on Bags of Hope, and then Kim's going to share her story on how this happened. But it's basically how to bring hope to foster children and families. And I look forward to hearing her story. And all of this is in light of Advent, light in the darkness. So just be kind of listening to this video with that in mind.
Oh, it's love so undeniable. I can
Good morning. Good morning. Thank you so much for having me this morning. I'm so thankful to be here. It took so it was a very quick drive to church, and I've been traveling around doing Bags of Hope, so this was such a blessing this morning to wake up and just drive down the street. But I'm so thankful that you got to see this video and have a good picture of this project. But I'm gonna take you back briefly before this project started and share with you how this little teeny thought became Bags of Hope and where we started. So I'm going to share with you my family's story of adoption and foster care, so bear with me. And then I'll talk about the Bags of Hope project. So my husband and I have been married 11 years. When we first got married, we immediately wanted a big family. It was the first thing we talked about, the first thing we discussed, and soon after getting married, I got pregnant with our first daughter, Grace. And she was born, and we immediately started trying for number 2, and that just didn't happen. And my husband kept saying, you know, we've always wanted to adopt a child out of local foster care. Maybe we should do the classes. And I kept saying, no, we're gonna keep trying, And part of this process and part of our story is about all these plans that we have in our heart, but that the Lord has the plans that prevail. That the Lord has the plans that are sometimes something that we couldn't picture. So we ended up starting foster care classes and adoption classes in Massachusetts. And as we started these classes, our eyes started to be open to all of the needs and the kids that are waiting currently in our states to be adopted. And it just started to really break our hearts. And so we continued the foster care and adoption classes in Massachusetts, and we finished up and were placed with an 11-month-old baby boy named Shane. And so we took Shane into our home, and it was supposed to be just, he was a child that he had bounced from foster home to foster home, but now his plan was to be adopted. And it was one of those wonderful stories where everything went wrong, like one thing after another. So they said, his birth mom hasn't been sober in 20 years, and all of these different things. And everything, we got to the place where we were at court, ready to move forward with his adoption, and the attorney turned to me and she said, Kim, I think we're gonna lose this one. I think you should go home and pack his things. And at this point, he had lived with us almost a year. And so I just kept saying, why would the Lord bring us down this road? Why would we, all this pain, and we packed up his things. And the attorneys called me and the social workers, and they said, the judge is gonna, have a decision tomorrow, and we'll know if he's going to stay or go. Well, tomorrow came, and the next day came, and Thanksgiving came, and Christmas came, and 6 months later, we received a call that the judge had decided that we could move forward with the adoption. And it was a long roller coaster, very painful ride, and I said to my husband, I could never do that again. It's what everybody says happens. It's always difficult. I will never do that again. I'm so thankful that we have Shane, and I'm so thankful for this adoption, but I never want to get on that roller coaster again. And so we still wanted a big family, and at this point we had a 2-year-old and 3-year-old and 11-month-old, and we still wanted a big family. And to be honest, the fertility struggle was really bothering me, and it was such a struggle. And I kept saying to the Lord, like, why did you place this inside of my heart to have a big family and then be able to not move forward with that plan? So we decided that we were going to move forward with treatment, medical treatment. We were going to go the medical route, and I kept saying, I'm not doing adoption again. It's too emotional, it's too hard. And so we made all the appointments, scheduled everything to move forward with some fertility treatment. And I kept waking up without a peace. And I kept saying to my husband, I really want to do this, but I don't have a peace. And so he said, let's take 30 days and fast and pray. And so we took 30 days and fasted and prayed about what we were supposed to do as a family. And on the last day of that fast, I was sitting at my kitchen table reading the word, and the Lord said to me, as clear as day, this is not a problem. This is the plan. And it was one of those moments where I was like, wait a second, this isn't a medical situation. I'm a nurse. Like, there has to be some kind of resolve to this. And the Lord just kept saying to me, you do not have a problem. This is the plan. And I called the doctor's office. I canceled everything, and the next day a social worker showed up at our house to do a routine home visit, and he said, are you guys interested in doing adoption again? And I said, if you had come yesterday, the answer would have been no, but today the answer is yes, I think we are going to pursue adoption again. And he said, all right, it's going to take a while because we got to get your family home study back up to date and all of that. And I said, that's fine. And he left, and the next morning, next afternoon, he called me, and he said, I have a favor. And I was thinking, oh, probably something simple, he needs paperwork or something. He said, I have a little 22-month-old boy in our office who all of our foster homes locally are full. And I know you and John have never talked about foster care, but will you take him just as an emergency placement for tonight? And maybe the next couple nights. And he also has a brand new baby sister that was just born today. Will you take her as well? So I said, well, I'm sure John won't mind. So, John was actually working over at our church, so I pulled up and I was like, get in quick, we gotta get home. There's a couple babies coming in 20 minutes. So we went home, and within 20 minutes, our world did radically change, and we had a severely neglected 22-month-old dropped off on our doorstep, and I experienced a very sad, very sad insight into the world of a lot of things that kids live through, and that just some harsh realities. So we took care of him. I went to the hospital to get this beautiful little girl, and she was severely drug addicted, and I walked into that hospital room, and I just thought, oh my goodness, all of my frustrations and struggles and how badly I wanted to get pregnant, all of that was nothing compared to what she needed at that moment. She needed somebody that was available, and if we had moved forward with all of the other things we were thinking and planning, I wouldn't have been able to be a mom to a baby that needed a mom so badly at that moment. And it was a life-changing moment. We took her home, and very shortly after, both of their goals changed to adoption, and those 2 days turned into years, and we were able to legalize their adoption. That was March. The following March, I got a phone call from the same social worker who said to me, Kim, I know I've done this to you before, but once again, all of our foster homes are full. And he said, I literally have a newborn in a car seat in our office, and we have nowhere for this baby again tonight. Could you take this baby tonight? And I said, oh, wow, we have 4, and and it's a little bit busy, and I work. And he's like, oh, just for tonight. I said, yeah, just for tonight. So I said, you know what, let me pray about it, let me talk to my husband, and I'll call you back. And my friend, I had called one of my friends, and she called me back, and she had said, I've been praying for you. And she said, I've never had something really clear that the Lord told me to share with somebody before this clear. And she said, he keeps telling me that I need to tell you the letter J, that this has something to do with the letter J. And I was like, oh, all right, well, I'm not sure. So I called the social worker back, and the social worker said, oh, Kim, we found a home for that baby, you're all set. So I said, okay, good. So I called her and I said, the letter J must be for something else, but it's not for us because this fell through. Well, the phone rings again, and the social worker said, that placement fell through, and I really need you tonight to take care of baby James. And I was like, all right, I guess we're in. So that was almost 3 years ago. He's still with us, and his adoption is about to be legalized. So the following March after that, so these are 4 marches in a row. The following March after that, I got a phone call that the biological mom of the 2 that we had took in that emergency situation, that she had given birth to another severely addicted baby, and she had delivered, and she had walked by the nurses station at the hospital and said, call Kim and John, they'll come. And the nurses didn't know what they were talking about, but of course they had filed a report, and the social workers called us and said there was a biological sibling born to your other 2, and he is at the hospital, and we were wondering if you would take him. And she didn't name him or anything like that, and we got there, and it was just an incredible experience because it was one of those cases where they told us, I remember walking in and the social worker looked at me and she said, I know all of your other cases have been such a roller coaster ride. She said, but we just went before the judge and this baby's 100% gonna be an adoption and everything's gonna go through. She said, so you can walk in that room and you can name him and you can enjoy all of these moments that before, for so many years and so many of your other cases have been such a roller coaster ride. And so we did, and it's very interesting because we just legalized his adoption this past July, but we named him Levi, and we called him Levi since birth, and his birth certificate and everything that he had said baby boy because he wasn't named, and we couldn't legally change his name to his adoption this year. So for 1.5 years, his name was baby boy on everything, medical records. And I mean, just imagine going to the doctors, the hospital, the ER, and they're like, his name, you're like, baby boy. Like, Levi is what we called him, but, you know, and you just realize the scope of that, of being, you know, but it's just amazing that within 4 short years, we added 5 children to our family. So their current ages now are 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, and 9. And, you know, I remember walking around in Target with Grace when she was only 2, and I remember every time I passed a carriage, it was at the time we were going through a lot of the fertility struggles, and I remember walking by other moms with carriages, and every time I walked by someone that had a lot of children in their carriage, I got upset. I got, like, why would the, like, it was all this struggle back and forth with why? And now every time I'm pushing my Target carriage through the store, I'm thinking people, if anybody looked at me, they would think the same thing, but what they don't know is like the journey that we've been on and where all these children have been from and through. And I remember being at the altar right before the 2 little ones were placed with us emergently. And I remember saying to the Lord, how on earth will you give us the desires of our heart for a big family, and how will this happen? And it's almost not a Sunday morning, I don't pass the altar and think, okay, Lord, I get it. Like, you know, it's just, but I wouldn't, there's nothing about our adoption stories that I would change. I mean, there's not a moment that I ever wish we had done something different or that we had gone a different way. I'm so thankful that the Lord's opened up these doors and that He's blessed us with these amazing kids who have, you know, needed a home, and that we've been able to provide that through the Lord. And so Bags of Hope stemmed a little bit out of all of this because two reasons. One is, as I was sitting in all those foster care and adoption classes and hearing about the number of kids waiting, all I could think of was the only person that can fix this is the Lord. The only person who can change this is the church. And so it just like birthed this thing inside of me that I said, why? I remember going to, you know, Jordan's Furniture does a lot with adoption, and I remember going, they have a book at Jordan's Furniture, and if you ever go there, you can go, they have this book in the lobby, and for the kids in Massachusetts, it's all the kids currently waiting for a home in Massachusetts. It's their picture and their story. And Rhode Island has the same thing with the Heart Gallery. And I remember just flipping through that book and standing in Jordan's Furniture, like weeping, because how can this be? How can all these kids be waiting for homes, 350 in Mass and 200 in Rhode Island, like waiting for adoptive families? And I just thought, you know what, like the amount of churches we have, one family from every church, if one family adopted, we would literally wipe out foster care and kids waiting, wipe out the need in a second. And so that started to birth inside of me. And then we were sitting in the classes one day, and the social worker explained what happens when children are removed from their home. Typically it's an emergency. Typically they go in, they have a black trash bag, and the social workers will tell you they keep black trash bags in their car because they do a lot of removal of children from their homes, and most of the time it's in very dangerous situations. So they'll go in, they'll grab a black trash bag and throw some of the children's favorite things or pajamas or whatever in the trash bag, and then that child will move to a foster home, but then that foster home can only keep them 2 nights or 2 weeks, and then they'll move to another foster home that's more permanent, but then their things will stay in the trash bag, but then they'll move again to an, you know, and they move and they move and they move, and a lot of times that bag comes with them. And my husband literally yelled out in the class, that can't be, like kids cannot be walking around with their things in a trash bag. And she's like, I'm just preparing you because you may get a child with a trash bag and I don't want you to be surprised. And then I read a story about a little girl who traveled through foster care in Florida and that she had a trash bag, and then it just kept breaking us. We kept talking about it and talking about it. And we pulled up our first son that we adopted. We pulled up at the foster home to pick him up, and John grabbed Shane, and I walked up to the door, and the foster mom said to me, I have one thing to give you before you leave. And she handed me a black trash bag with his things in it that had his 11 months of things that had traveled with him. And so we got in the car, and I remember shutting the car door, and I looked at John, and I was like, well, I guess that's it. This is not okay. Like, now we've experienced the trash bag thing. And so on that drive home down 195, I said, let's do something, like, let's find a way. So I called the social worker, and I said, I know this is a little outside the box, but for Christmas, John and I want to do a couple duffel bags with kids' names monogrammed on them that are in foster care, so they have something to call their own, something to put their things in. And she's like, oh, no problem, I'll send you over a couple names. And then the names kept coming. And so I stood up at church on a Sunday morning, and I said, I have this like really crazy idea. I want to monogram these duffel bags, and will anybody help me? Is anybody willing to help me? Because the names keep coming. And a gentleman stood up and he said, I own Sandy Lane Sports in Warwick. I'll monogram every duffel bag for you and donate the bag if you can fill it with Christmas gifts. So I went to a couple group homes and met with a few kids in foster care and said, if you could have anything, what would you want inside of a duffel bag? And almost every single one of them said to me, a blanket. And I was like, a blanket? And they said, yeah, you sleep at so many different people's homes. And some people keep their houses cold, and some people don't have comfortable beds or sheets, but I just want to have my own blanket. Isn't that a very interesting thing? And so we put a blanket in every single bag, and we also do other comfort items, pillow pets, Bath and Body, Axe gift sets, Max Lucado books. We've been able to do Bibles in some of the group homes that don't mind us putting Bibles in, but we are able to put 3 to 4 really nice gifts. We try to keep them really nice quality in each bag. And so as we started to grow, this is like very unexpected, because here I am thinking we're doing like a little one-time little Christmas project. The social workers kept calling saying, can you do more bags? Can you do more bags? Can you do more bags? And that's how, in the video, as you've seen, how we've grown. And the coolest part, the best part, is that when you help with the project and you're able to support a child, you get that child's name on an ornament, a Christmas ornament. And we ask that you pray for that child all year. And what keeps happening is these kids keep coming across our paths and into our life. And the Lord showed me something very amazing last Sunday, and I want to share it with you really quickly about how real these names are on these ornaments and how real these kids are. So I've been out at different churches for the last few months, and so I was at my home church last week, and so I set up a table of ornaments to sell. And I never bring ornaments from kids that are near, like we have a lot of kids in foster care in our church and a lot of families that have fostered and adopted, so I never want our kids to be on the ornaments that are at our church. So I picked a different office across the state and put those ornaments out. Well, during service I ran out. So I called a few friends that were selling some ornaments for me at other churches, and they dropped them off on their way by. So I was just putting ornaments out. And a 10-year-old little girl in our church who's in foster care walked over to the table, and she stood in front of me, and she reached down, and tears started pouring down her face, and she said, this is my 3-year-old sister. And she picked up the ornament, and I was like, you can keep it and pray for her, you know? And I'm standing there crying, and everybody at the ornament table is crying. And this other little girl in our church, totally separate family, walks up, 7, it's her last day in this foster home, she's getting moved again. And her name is on the table in front of her, and she starts crying. So I say, go bring that to Pastor Holly. She wants to pray for you. Bring it to her, she'll pray for you. So I'm like crying again. And so this other foster mom who's from Rhode Island, these families are from Mass, comes over to me and says, I have 2 foster children with me today, 13 and 15. I paid for ornaments for them. They're gonna come over and pick 2 children to pray for. So these 2 teenage girls come over, they get to the table and they look down and their 2 names are side by side on the table. And I'm standing there and I'm like, okay, I had New Bedford this morning as what I was selling for ornaments. I've had kids from Taunton, Attleboro, and now Providence come over, how I got these ornaments, and two of the ornaments I wrote on 3 months ago and have sold 3,000 ornaments since then. So it's just, I just stood there and I said, it's the Lord continuously showing me how real this project is, how real these children are, how they're in our midst, how they're all around us. And my husband picked up an 18-year-old homeless off the streets a couple of years ago, and he walks through my front door with his duffel bag over his shoulder. He had received one of the first bags and he still had it. And I walked by our guest room and I saw the blanket inside, like laid over the bed, and I'm just like, it's just a constant reminder of how valuable the project is. And just one last story about the bags and how amazing it is. A lot of the families that have come out to help us wrap and put the bags together are from all over, churches all over the area. And a lot of the families, when you stand in a room with 2,500 duffel bags and you know each of those bags have a name on it, it's very hard to not be overwhelmed with the fact that this is real. And those bags and a lot of those pictures were stacked higher than my head. And when you realize those are each a child, it's very overwhelming. And a lot of the families that have come to help us have ended up going out to foster or adopt. And one of the families, they decided to foster, and so they got a call to take their first foster placement, and it was a 4-year-old little girl. And so she goes out to the car to help the social worker get the little girl out, and the little girl has one of the first duffel bags we ever filled with her. And she takes a picture of it and she sends it to me. And it's not uncommon that as social workers move these kids around Mass and Rhode Island, they will text me pictures of the bags as they're moving and say, another bag moving again, carrying these kids through these seasons. And what's incredible is that not only are the bags carrying them through these seasons, but the prayers are carrying through the seasons. And I remember a 16-year-old boy coming up to me and saying, can you show me who was praying for me a couple years ago when they had my ornament? And so I just, as much as the bag is nice, it's an earthly possession, it's just a thing. And we're happy to give it and we're happy to do it, but I'm more thankful that we have the opportunity to carry these kids in prayer and to walk alongside of them. And so as I was saying, you can support a child for $25 and you get their ornament and you're able to pray for them. And then we take those names, we monogram them on duffel bags. We fill the duffel bags with these gifts, and all of the bags get delivered the first 2 weeks of December, so very, very quickly. And we go office to office delivering the bags. We also launched in Florida this year, so my husband has all of the Florida bags. He's packing up in our vehicle and driving down to Florida this week to deliver those. We went and launched this year, and so it's continued to spread. But the best part about it is the awareness to foster care and adoption, because before John and I began to foster or adopt, we thought orphanages were only in third world countries. So we used to fly to El Salvador and fly to Peru and fly to all these places and work in orphanages. And what we quickly learned is that the United States has lots of orphans. They're just hidden behind names like foster care, group homes, all different other names. And so as I was sharing one day about that book at Jordan's Furniture, one of the people from Massachusetts in the state showed up at my doorstep with the book and gave it to me and said, I know you're making progress here, getting families to foster and adopt. Here's all their pictures, so you don't have to go up to Jordan's Furniture and look, now you can help recruit for us as you go through churches. And so it's just the state, this has changed the game with the state, because they know that the church is the hope now. So now they're calling me saying, do you have any families for this child? Do you have any families for this child? Do you have any families for this child? And so we've been holding foster care classes and adoption classes, trying to get people licensed. And so I'm here for Bags of Hope, but my heart is that we as the church, the local church, are able to, change the story of foster care and adoption in this country. So thank you.
So I want to wrap up by lighting a candle. And Becky, would you mind just turn the lights off for a minute? I just want to talk to you for a minute. Because the Bags of Hope, and afterwards you can talk to Kim if you'd like to participate. And as a church, we're going to figure out how we can participate. But even as she's sharing, the gospel is filled with this imagery that we are the light, and there is darkness around us, but there's a lot of good around us. There's a lot of hope around us. There's a lot of Kims around us. There's a lot of folks that want to bring light into a child's life. A lot of people want to make a difference in the world. And last week, some of us, well, as a church, if you weren't here, we collected 100 backpacks, and we brought them to some folks in Providence that are homeless. And when we got there, so I was really proud of us as a church to do 100 backpacks. I thought that was fantastic. And some of you came with us, and you went down to Providence. Diane and I got there late because we had stayed back to, make sure this was locked up and cleaned up. And what we had talked about, though, is let's bring dignity, to these folks. Let's have a meal with them. Let's share time with them and get to, maybe get to know their story a little bit. And I guess what happened was when we got there was so much need in the room. There was so much desperation in the room. There was 150 people there. And they saw us bringing in the food. They saw us bringing in the backpacks. And immediately they're looking into their own need. And so as a way of, they started grabbing backpacks, and we had kids there. And all of a sudden they put a table, they put 3 or 4 tables in the midst of us to kind of protect us, to keep us safe. And I'm sitting there going, so it became us and them. The very thing we didn't want to happen. Because it's about us, we're all people. And I said to us, any one of us could end up homeless. And I shared a story about a man that was college educated, etc. So I started thinking about that, there was shame and desperation and guilt and all these different things that were on one side of the table, right? And it became like this. And here we are supposed to be bringing hope, bringing compassion, bringing love, right? And that's what stood on this side of the table. And I started thinking about it and saying, you know what? Remember when we did the thing over here? We put a curtain up with the table back there when we wanted to receive. We said it's so hard to receive a gift when I'm in need. And we said, take what you want off that table. And people had put their offering on the table, thousands of dollars. And we did it behind a curtain because we didn't want people to feel shame. We didn't want people to have a sense of desperation or to feel guilty about that offering. And I'm sitting there going, I've felt shame before. I've felt desperate before. I've been guilty before. We're all around this table. It's not us and them, as if I have something to offer them, that somehow I'm special. We're all part of this thing called life. We're all human beings created in the image of God. And so this little light is maybe that one backpack, maybe that one meal, maybe that one bag of hope. But in light of that, we can lay down this feeling, and we can remove this feeling, and we can alleviate this. When we bring in the light, oh, this was done wrong. They're still there. They're still at this table. But now the light is outshining the darkness. So look at yourselves as people pushing back the darkness. You have a light within you. Will you shine it? By adding value to another person's life in the small things. And when we do that, today is Advent. Advent is to usher in the new birth, usher in new life. And this idea is that there was a new kingdom to be announced. And God gave His Son Jesus. I was thinking about that, saying, it was messy.
it got to, you know when there's crowds and there's need and there's desperation, there's anger in the room, what do? The Messiah was right there and they started saying, crucify him, crucify him. And everyone started joining in out of their brokenness. That's the darkness. And Jesus laid down his life. And he said, those that follow me, will you be the light? And he put together this table with the bread and the cup because he wants us to participate in that, to join him in remembering what it's all about. And that when you leave here, you will leave with this sense of, I can be hope to another person. And I can bring my light. And each week leading up to Christmas, we're going to light another candle because each one represents more light. Keep pushing back the darkness. Be the light. So as you come up, if you would like to participate with us, just grab a cup, grab a piece of bread, and as you do that, be thinking about, we all come around this table with shame, with guilt, with desperation, with hopelessness, whatever it is. But if we remember the promises that we have in God, and that he gave his life for us so that we might be the light, that's what I want you to carry with you this week. So come up. Mark's going to sing for us. Come up as you wish. I don't care. I'm going to put those signs back up because I think they reflect who we are. And I'm going to pray, we'll sing, whatever, but you kind of come up as you want. It's about love, which was about sacrifice, which was about seeing the need and then being willing to enter into that need. Seeing guilt and saying, I made a way so that you don't need to be filled with guilt anymore. Seeing hopelessness and saying, you know what, I'm going to send up people around you that will take care of you, will be a light, and they'll offer you hope for a better tomorrow. And we're not going to leave you all alone in that. You don't need to be living life in desperation. I've come to give you a new life. But he knew it would be messy. He knew that this was not going to be easy. It cost them all their lives. All the disciples, their lives were sacrificed for the greater good, for the cause, for the way. So in our own lives, be reflecting on that. Because he said, he took a cup. He said, this is a cup of the new covenant. And it's for the forgiveness of sins. So when we miss the mark, when we mess up, we're united together through the blood of Christ. Let's go ahead and drink together, remembering him. Father, join us together around this table. None of us are special, and yet all of us are special. Father, we all enter with parts of us that are broken and need healing and restoration. We need the other. We're all in need. We're all in need of acceptance and of love and of belonging. But Lord, together, we can fulfill all of those needs if we're willing to. Help us to take those steps of trembling trust to enter the pain of someone else. To just look around us and see the needs and say, God, let me shine my light this day in this small way, in this gesture, in the power of the Holy Spirit alongside of it. May you bring a little bit of hope into this other person's life. So as we leave here, God, help us to see ourselves as the light that you've called us to go forth and to bring hope this week. In Jesus' name, amen.